next stop in our oyster exploration is Matunuck Oyster Bar, which sits on the edge of Potter Pond in Wakefield, Rhode Island. Owner and farmer Perry Rosso has created an innovative and ambitious culinary operation, combining an oyster and shellfish farm and a year-round organic vegetable farm with a full-service restaurant.
We're going to head out to Matunuck Oyster Farm right now. Matunuck Oyster Farm is a 7-acre farm. It's wading depth, so it's about, depending on the tide, it's knee to waist deep or knee to chest deep. The pond has a very high salinity in Potter Pond. Potter Pond has about 30 parts per thousand. The open ocean here has 32 parts per thousand. So it has some of the highest salinity of any of the salt ponds in the area, which blends to their flavor. They're crisp, briny with a slightly sweet finish. And oysters are like wine. Depending on where they're grown and how they're grown, it impacts their flavor, their appearance, the texture of the meat. And you'll see that on the raw bar. We'll have different oysters from different ponds in Rhode Island, and they have subtle differences and really drastic appearance differences and subtle taste differences. So I got into aquaculture after years of being a commercial harvester. Commercial shellfish harvester, scuba diving and digging for clams and steamers. And I went away to school in Colorado, and I loved Colorado, but I realized there that I missed the ocean, and I wanted to study the ocean. So I got into marine biology, and then wound up studying aquaculture and fisheries and pathology science, and so that's how I wound up starting the oyster farm. So I originally bought the restaurant because I needed the commercial docks. And the restaurant had been, it was closed when I bought it, and there was a few different names, and it was originally the Seagull in 1942, and it changed names and changed hands several times. In 2009, I bought it and opened it in the summer of 2009 against a lot of people's advice. Really poor economy in the winter of 2009, but I opened July 1st of 2009, and we were very busy. We're serving, the oysters and as well as other seafood and local food that we get from people that I had met from doing farmers markets. And so gradually the restaurant's grown. A few years ago, USA Today named Matunuck Oyster Bar top 10 oyster bars in the world. The raw bar, we display Rhode Island shellfish. We have our Matunuck oysters right here. We have Watch Hill oysters, Quonset oysters, some little neck clams from Narragansett Bay. People, when they come here, they really want a Rhode Island experience. And so, we've tried having other oysters on the menu, sometimes West Coast, sometimes from Mass and New York. But really, I find that people really go after the Rhode Island oysters. So we really have exclusively Rhode Island oysters on the raw bar. And I think that is the freshest product, and Rhode Island oysters are some of the best oysters in the world, so it is makes sense for us. That's who we are. So you can see the difference between a Matunuck oyster and a Quonset oyster. There's different colors. The Matunucks have more of an emerald color, and they're obviously much smaller or petite. And you have a Quonset oyster has more of a mineral kind of a look on it, and that's from the algae they're eating, versus the Watch Hill. Watch Hills are grown water body that's more similar to a Matunuck and similar colors, but obviously, again, a much larger product. Certain people, when they come in, they want to try an oyster. They've never had one before. Having a smaller oyster, Matunuck oyster, is a great way for them to start. A cocktail oyster is just a little taste of what this guy is going to wind up tasting like, which is a big mouthful of meat. So that is some subtle differences between these products, these Rhode Island oysters. Matunuck oyster. These are all the same age. They're all about 2 or 3 years old. You can count the age of an oyster just like you can count the age of a tree. It has concentric rings. When the growth season stops, it makes these rings on the oyster shell.
Under the guidance of head chef Jeff Cruff, the menu at Matunuck Oyster Bar goes way beyond your typical clam shack fare and features both classic and innovative dishes using locally sourced ingredients, much of it from their own farms. There's a wide variety of options here, but the oysters are definitely the star attraction.
All right, we're gonna make our oyster stew, something that's been on the menu since I think the day I got here. We change it seasonally. It's super rich. It's great for this time of year, but something that people order all year round. It is a very traditional dish. Ours is slightly different, but you start off with a little bit of whole butter, a little bit of fresh shallot, and the parsnips and the sweet potatoes. These you can cook 3 or 4 minutes just to take the bite away. So the next step, these are softened, not too much. They still have a little bit of a bite to them. I'm gonna add the rosemary cream, which we make ahead of time. It's not something that we can do. The rosemary's gotta simmer for a little while for the flavor to come through. So we make the cream sauce before service, and then while we're making it to order, we just add the cream in. So it has some white wine, lots of shallot, a little tiny bit of garlic, a lot of rosemary, heavy cream, and the liquor from oysters, the juice that comes out of oysters after we shuck the oysters. That's simmered, reduced a little bit. So the trick with the stew is to not overcook the oysters. It's something you want to add at the last minute, and really they just get poached for a second. What we do is we just quickly cook the oysters in some herb butter, and then we lay them on top of the oyster cream. The liquor from the oysters is already in the stew itself, so the flavor of the oyster's in there. Microgreens that we grow at the farm. So this is our cucumber oyster, Perry's creation. It's great for the summer. It's a fried oyster, but it's really light. It goes on a cucumber round, a little bit of sliced onion, some fresh chiffonade of mint, some sliced avocado, and what we call a remoulade sauce. It's not a traditional remoulade sauce, but it's like a spicy mayonnaise-based sauce. So this is our oysters Rockefeller oyster, obviously. Some steamed spinach and our Rockefeller sauce. A lot of the flavor comes from this. Pernod's kind of like an anise licorice-y flavor. And this is a classic dish. We didn't really change it up too much. So stuffed lobsters are something that's been on the menu again since I started. The process starts with a live lobster. We break down the live lobster, remove all the parts, remove the legs. We will cook this slightly, just enough so that the tail is just part way cooked. And then we're gonna fill it with the remaining seafood, some scallops, some shrimp, and the claws and the knuckles from each lobster individually. We'll put it back into the body, put the stuffing on top of it, and then we'll roast it whole that way. It's sesame seared yellowfin tuna. Sometimes bluefin, sometimes big eye, but generally we get yellowfin. All the sea scallops that we sell come from the Karen Elizabeth, which is a boat that leaves out of Quonset. So this is our ceviche. It's citrus based. There's some ruby red grapefruit, orange, lime, lemon juice. It's pretty traditional, we didn't reinvent the wheel. It's just super fresh, super tasty. We have our 2 chowders, our creamy chowder and our traditional Rhode Island chowder. The Rhode Island chowder does not have dairy in it. Very traditional recipe. Yeah, we do have a full fried menu, just like a fish shack. We have fried oysters, fried whole belly clams, fish and chips. We have a couple of fried oyster appetizers, but there's everything.
So we love the oysters here. We drive out of our way to come here, and it's just fantastic. How about you? Everything's so fresh. I've seen this place grow from a shack to what it is today. It's awesome.
I don't know what to do.